Welcome back to the channel. Today we share the heartbreaking and inspiring story of Amina, a poor African orphan who turned her pain into hope. Her story will stay with you long after you hear it. Amina was born in a tiny village called Catcher. Everyone there knew each other's names and stories. It was a place where neighbors shared meals, laughter, and tears, despite having so little. Her parents were humble farmers who worked the fields from sunrise to sunset. They owned almost nothing but carried endless dreams for their daughter's future. At night, her parents would hold her close and whisper, "One day you will go far, Amina. One day you will do great things." But when she was just 3 years old, tragedy struck. A wave of malaria swept through the village like a shadow. Her parents grew weaker each day, their strength fading like the setting sun. Amina watched helplessly, her tiny hands bringing water they could barely sip. She didn't understand why the people she loved most could no longer hold her, why their smiles had turned into whispers and silence. Within a single week, both were gone. At only 3 years old, Amina's world crumbled. She didn't yet know the word orphan, but she felt its meaning in her bones. The laughter that once filled her home had turned to a deafening silence. Neighbors carried her to Mama Amina, her father's sister. Amina clutched a torn cloth that had belonged to her mother, hoping it would bring comfort. But as she looked into her aunt's stern eyes, she felt a chill run through her tiny body. She waited for a hug, for words of comfort, for anything to ease the pain. Instead, Mama Amina's voice was sharp. "There is no time for tears. From now on, you will work." That night, Amina cried herself to sleep on a cold mat. Every morning before the sun even touched the horizon, Amina was forced to fetch water. The buckets were so heavy that her small arms shook under their weight, but she dared not complain. Each step on the rocky path felt like punishment. The sun beat down mercilessly as she walked barefoot for miles. The dust burned her feet. Still, she whispered to herself, "One more step, Amina, one more step." She had no choice. Failure meant the sting of a whip or harsher words from her aunt. At night, instead of rest, she endured beatings. Sometimes it was for spilling a drop of water, sometimes for no reason at all. She learned to cry quietly, pressing her face into the mat so no one would hear. And yet, through the pain, Amina held on to a secret hope. Each night, before closing her eyes, she whispered, "One day things will be different. One day I will be free." School became her only escape. The classroom had cracked walls, broken chairs, and only a handful of old books. But to Amina, it was a palace, a place where her mind could soar even if her body remained trapped. She always sat at the very front, straining to catch every word the teacher spoke. While other children sometimes drifted into daydreams, Amina's eyes shone with hunger, not for food, but for knowledge. One day, her teacher leaned close and whispered, "You are destined for greatness. Amina, never let anyone dim your light." Those words became her secret armor, a shield she carried everywhere. Still, hunger was her constant companion. Some mornings, her only meal was a small cup of porridge shared by neighbors. Yet, even with an empty stomach, she walked to school with her head held high. At night, when her aunt forced her to finish chores by candlelight, Amina would sneak open her books, even if her stomach growled and her eyes stung with sleep. She read until the candle burned out. One afternoon, as she walked home from school carrying a stack of books she'd borrowed, she met a woman with kind eyes who stopped and knelt beside her. Her name was Sarah Thompson. She was visiting the village to learn about the children there. As Sarah looked at Amina, she saw not just a tired little girl, but a spark of brilliance fighting to survive. Sarah asked softly, "Do you like school?" Amina nodded shyly. Then Sarah's next words changed everything. "Would you like to come with me to the city? I will take care of you." Amina's heart pounded. Was this a dream? Could it be real? For the first time in years, she felt a flicker of hope. She whispered, "Yes." That night, she packed the only things she owned, a torn dress, a pair of worn sandals, and her mother's necklace. She held the necklace tightly, praying her parents could see her now. The next morning, she walked away from the life of suffering she had known, holding Sarah's hand. She didn't look back, afraid her courage might shatter. If she did, the city overwhelmed her. Tall buildings touched the clouds, cars honked and rushed by, and lights flickered everywhere. To Amina, it felt like stepping into another world. But Sarah's kindness was constant. She gave Amina warm meals, clean clothes, and a bed of her own. For the first time in her life, Amina slept without fear. Soon she was enrolled in a good school. The classrooms were bright, the books new, and the teachers encouraging. Amina studied harder than ever before, determined not to waste the chance she had been given. Each time she opened a book, she thought of her parents. She whispered to herself, "This is for you. I will make you proud." Years passed. Amina grew from a quiet little girl into a confident young woman. Her voice became strong, her mind sharper than ever. She began to dream bigger than the sky above her. In time, she became a respected media executive. Her intelligence and compassion earned her admiration everywhere she went. Yet, despite her success, her heart always carried the memory of her village. Late at night, in her modern office, she would stare out the window and remember the girl she once was, barefoot, hungry, and carrying heavy buckets of water. One evening, she noticed children begging on the streets. Their eyes were wide with the same hunger she once knew too well. She stopped and knelt down, giving them food and money. As she watched them eat, tears filled her eyes. She knew she couldn't save everyone, but she could not walk away either. One little boy looked up at her with hopeful eyes and asked softly, "Are you from this country?" Amina hesitated. She wanted to say no, but then she whispered, "I wasn't. But now I am." In that moment, she understood. Home is not where you are born, but where you choose to give love. That night, she wept. She knew she could no longer ignore the call of her past. The girl she once was demanded. She returned to the village that had shaped her. She booked a flight the very next week as the airplane lifted. Into the sky, she clutched her mother's necklace, whispering, "I'm coming home." When she arrived in Kacha, her heart sank. The village looked almost the same: crumbling huts, hungry children, tired faces. Time had stood still, except for the weight of suffering. As she walked the familiar paths, people whispered, "Is that her? The little girl who left?" Some looked on with her, others with disbelief. Then she saw Mama Amina. Her hair was gray, her face lined with age, but her eyes were just as cold as Amina remembered. Mama Amina sneered, "So you dare return after all these years?" Amina's voice was steady. "You made me suffer when I needed love the most, but I am not here to judge you. I am here to forgive you." Her words silenced the crowd. The very next day, Amina began to rebuild the village. She brought architects, teachers, and doctors. She poured her success into the soil of her childhood home. She built schools with bright classrooms, full of books and uniforms for every child. The sound of laughter returned as children ran through the halls. She built a clinic so that no parent would ever bury a child because of malaria again. For the first time, medicine was within reach for everyone. She built strong, safe homes with roofs that didn't leak and doors that didn't break. Even Mama Amina was given a home. Soon the village that once echoed with sorrow was alive with joy. Children ran through the streets, their laughter as bright as the sun. The villagers embraced her. Some wept, calling her a blessing. Others simply held her hands and said, "Welcome home, daughter." Mama Amina never apologized, but Amina smiled gently at her anyway. She had already chosen forgiveness, because Amina knew true power is not in holding on to pain, but in letting it go. Amina had every reason to hate, but she chose love, every reason to stay away, but she returned, and because of her, an entire village found hope. Again,